If you love pickleball, then you know we can all agree that there's one thing that we as players universally hate, and it's crowded public rec courts. With the popularity of pickleball, public courts have become overloaded with people. There's long wait times in between games, and sometimes the court themselves are in pretty bad condition. But the problem is, you can't really avoid this unless you have your own private pickleball court. But what's shocking is the cost. Court bids can range from $20,000 to $50,000 for the cost of the build. So unless you have a boatload of extra cash lying around, this dream can feel pretty out of reach. But all this kind of got me thinking, if I had the space, got the supplies, did the labor myself, how much money could I really save in the process? And could a person like me with literally no construction experience figure out how to do it? So I'm setting out to learn how to DIY a pickleball court in my city. And surprise, me and the team are actually putting in 2 of them. We're gonna be doing everything from repairing the court, prepping the surface, repainting it, and striping the lines. And be sure to stay to the end because I'm gonna be sharing how much money we're saving by doing the labor ourselves. So in order to build a pickleball court, you first need an area. Now the area that we're transforming is actually an old rundown tennis court. Now, if you're a tennis player, don't be mad because we're actually saving the tennis lines. We're just adding 2 pickleball courts, 1 on each side. But the very first step in the process really has to do with prepping the court. Now, it's really important to note that this is an asphalt court. And with that being said, it's also in very bad condition. There's very deep cracks and very deep crevices, and there's dirt, and it just needs a little TLC. So for any type of surface, it's really important that you first start by power washing. The power washing gets all the dirt and debris off of the surface so that the paint and the new surface can actually stick to it. So it's really important that you first start by power washing. Once you do that, then we go into crack repair. Now for this part of the video, I have to pull out the big guns. And by the big guns, I mean I'm introducing you to one of the people on this team. And this is Will from Dalton Enterprises. That's who manufactures the Plush line of pickleball coatings that we'll be using. And he's gonna explain how to repair a crack.
Like all crack repair, you want to clean out the crack the best you can. Make sure you remove all the dirt, debris, anything that's in it.
So here we just used a weed hoe from Home Depot, and all you kind of do is you kind of take the pick end of it and you run it through the crack. You really want to get the side walls and all the debris out of there. Finish cleaning it out by sweeping and leaf blowing. Now you're going to grab your Plush patch binder kit. When you open it up, you're going to see that there's some liquid in a separate container, and you're going to go ahead and mix it all together with a mixer. It's important to note that you can adjust the consistency based on the crack. So a small hairline crack can be thinner consistency than a really big crevice.
So now we have our crack filler all mixed up, ready to go. Now we're going to apply it down the crack.
So how you apply it is you pour the mixture along the crack. After that, you take this tool called the V-squeegee and you run it across the crack, pushing the mixture down into it. It should end up looking something like this. The depths of the cracks will determine whether you need to do 1 or 2 layers of the patch binder kit. Ideally, you want the cracks to be the same level as the regular surface. It's also important to note that you have to let the first layer dry before applying another. You can tell if it's dry or not based on the color. When it's first applied, it's that bright white, and then when it's dried, it's kind of that concrete color. The next step in the process is sanding and scraping the court, which now I'm going to introduce you to my other team member, John. John's another expert in this field, and he's going to tell me all about scraping.
So we've filled the cracks now, let them cure overnight. And now Dania has a scraper, and she's going to put steady down pressure on back and forth to make sure she gets a smooth surface.
The biggest thing you should know here is to not scrape exactly laterally because you don't want to dig out any of the crack resurfacer. So it's really important to go diagonal in your strokes. It is really important to make sure that you get all the high spots and all the extra product off of the crack because this essentially is what's going to make your court level.
If you don't have a large scraper, you can get a small sander, and you basically want to take off all the rough spots because you don't want to have any edges once you've done your final paint.
In my opinion, this part of the process was probably the hardest and the most tedious, but once you get past this, it starts to get really fun. Now we're going to go into the acrylic resurfacer.
Next step is to put the primer down. We call it our acrylic resurfacer. So what we want to do is get a mud flap. I recommend opening up all the pails before you do it so you can mix them all first.
We mixed each pail for about 2 minutes each, and it's best to mix all of them at the same time. When you're done mixing, go ahead and bring them out to the court area that you're covering and space them about 8 to 10 feet apart. So now we're gonna go through the application process. Now the biggest thing that I learned is you wanna be pulling the squeegee at all times. If you push, what ends up happening is it kind of like
It chatters.
the chatter. Okay,
Yep.
You see how it kind of jumps around? And that chatter can cause paint splash and other errors when you're applying the product. Now, how you want to start applying it is you want to pour the acrylic resurfacer down in what's called a bead or a trail of the product. Then you want to follow it up with the squeegee. Now, it's really important to make sure that you don't let that bead or trail of product run out. That's why we set down those pails every 8 to 10 feet so that you can just continue using them until the whole surface is covered. This process actually moves really quick. And even though we're doing a massive area, it didn't take us that much time. Once you do a coat of acrylic resurfacer, you want to make sure that you let it dry, and if it's in bad condition, you do another coat, but if not, then we move on to chalking. So now we're going to chalk the court lines. The reason we need to chalk these is because we're going to be laying down paint, and we want to make sure, especially if you're doing dual colors, that you're putting the paint in the correct spots and that you have a true straight line. I'm going to put a picture on the screen of the dimensions of a regular pickleball court, but what we're doing here is going to be slightly different since we do have the old tennis court lines and we are adding 2 pickleball courts on each side. So what you would do is you would find a reference point, measure out the 4 corners, and then take your chalk line and anchor it down to the corners. Then you'll grab the chalk line, snap it, and it should make a straight line all the way to the other corner. And you want to do this until you have your whole court outlined. And now we're on to the funnest part of this whole process, which is finally putting down the color. Today we're going to be using Dalton's line of Plush pickleball paint. So with the paint colors, it's best to mix them for 2 to 3 minutes per pail. And then we're going to do a technique called batching, which is mixing the colors together. This just ensures that you have a uniform shade between all the colors. What I loved about using these products is the technique is all the same from basically here on out. Use the same type of squeegee with the same type of technique. The only thing you want to be cognizant of is what area to start painting first. It's best to start from the inside working out. So our inner court is just one color. So we're going to start with the blue. That's going to be the inside of the court. And then we're going to end with the green, which is going to be the outside of the court. If you're nervous about the corners, you can go ahead and take a paintbrush and just hand paint those. After we finish the blue, we'll go ahead and let it dry for a little bit. And after it's dry, we'll go over with our second coat. Once we do our second coat, then we'll go straight into the green. And you guys, this is why I loved using these products. It's using the same tools, the same technique, but now just a different color. So now you see us spreading the green on the background color around the blue. And like I said, everything's the same. You want to pull the squeegee. You don't want the bead to run out. You want to set out your pails so you don't have to run back and forth. And you can always hand paint if you're nervous about corners. Once you get that first coat done, then you're going to want to let it sit for a little bit, and then you can go ahead and paint the second coat. Adding that second coat is going to make this look so vibrant. It's going to take it from this to this. So now that we have both the first coat and the second coat down, we let them dry, and now it's time to stripe the court. Now when it comes to striping the lines, you have to go back in and remeasure everything, even though you've outlined it before. It's just really important to make sure these measurements are exact because this is where the lines are going to go. So you want to find a reference point, all 4 corners, make sure and check that all 4 corners are a true right angle, mark the surface boxes, the non-volley zone lines, and make a tick mark in the very middle of the court so you can mark where the net goes. And this is where you snap your chalk line. Now, don't make this mistake when you're measuring. The line itself is 2 inches, and the border of a pickleball court is 20 by 44, and that's the very edge of the outside sideline. So when you're measuring, you're going to want to measure the very outside of that line and be aware that the sideline is going to go in 2 inches. So you're going to take your chalk line, measure in 2 inches from all of your sidelines, and that's going to be the outside. Then with all the rest of the lines, you found the very middle, and you're going to measure 1 inch to the right and 1 inch to the left, because again, all the lines on the court are 2 inches. Now you're going to take some tape and mark all the chalk lines. Then you're going to cut out with a razor blade the parts where the lines overlap. Make sure that you press the tape down really well so that paint's not going to seep through when you go into the painting stage. And now we paint. So the biggest thing to remember here is to go with the tape, not against it, because if you go against it, you risk putting paint under the seams, which you don't want to do. Make sure you don't overload the brush, and know that doing 2 layers is going to give you that really crisp line. After you let the paint dry, you can carefully start peeling off the tape. This really is where it all comes to life. But before we go into the final reveal, I want to talk about the financial aspect of this. Now remember, for our project, we did a whole tennis court and 2 pickleball courts, so the price is very different. But if you had the space already and you just wanted to do 1 pickleball court, if you were to hire somebody out to do that, you could be spending anywhere from $2,000–$3,000. However, if you just went out and bought the materials yourself, did the labor yourself, you could get this project done anywhere from $900 to around $1,100. That's a huge difference. My biggest worry going into this was wondering, if I don't have any construction experience, could I do it? And the reality is, yeah. The products were really easy to use, the directions were pretty simple, and honestly the hardest part was just the crack repair, because it took a long time because the surface we had was extremely damaged. But if you didn't have that, and if your surface wasn't in as rough of a condition as ours, this project is really actually pretty simple. And now the moment you've all been waiting for. We took an old rundown tennis court that had a lot of cracks and a lot of damage. We cleaned it up, put a lot of work into it, and we created a brand new looking tennis court with 2 pickleball courts. I want to give a big thank you to the team at Dalton Enterprises and the Plush line of pickleball coatings for being the best and easiest products to use for this project. And lastly, to Stetson University College of Law for allowing us to give their court a makeover.